You are watching The World 24/7 on the NDTV network. I am Parmeshwar Bawa. We've got an action-packed bulletin lined up for you. Let's begin with the top stories you need to know. A powerful earthquake that struck off Russia's east coast has triggered a Pacific Ocean tsunami advisory for the United States and Japan.
Going to pay 25%.
Yeah, that India is preparing to face higher U.S. tariffs between 20 and 25%.
Yeah, I think so.
U.S. President Donald Trump says that India may be hit with a tariff rate of 20 to 25%, but cautioned the final levy had still not been finalized as our countries negotiate on a trade deal ahead of an August 1st deadline. In one of its most anticipated missions in recent years, the Indian Space Research Organization will launch NISAR, a NASA and ISRO Synthetic Aperture Radar, which is a sophisticated and expensive Earth observation satellite developed in collaboration with NASA. This will happen from Andhra Pradesh's Sriharikota this evening, Indian Standard Time. The International Monetary Fund has raised India's economic growth forecast to 6.4% for both FY26 and FY27, citing a more favorable external environment than anticipated in the April outlook. The United States has further tightened its non-immigrant visa norms, including conditions for interview waivers. From the 2nd of September, all non-immigrant visa applicants will generally require an in-person interview with a consular officer, barring a few exceptions. India overtook China to become the top exporter of smartphones to the United States, reflecting supply chain shifts in the face of global trade upheaval. Our big focus, a tsunami alert was issued in the Pacific after an earthquake of magnitude 8.7 struck the Russian coast. Tsunami alerts have been issued in multiple countries after this powerful earthquake off the Russian coast, with waves of 3 to 4 meters, that's about 19 to 13 feet. The USGS has confirmed a tsunami and issued an immediate tsunami warning for parts of Alaska. A tsunami warning has also been issued for the state of Hawaii. Meanwhile, Japan has ordered immediate evacuations for parts of the country, saying tsunami waves are approaching the coasts. As far as Russia is concerned, we now have first visuals from the Kuril Islands as well. Arjun has been tracking the latest for us. He joins us live with a quick update. Arjun, take us through the latest advisory.
Well, the latest 8.7 magnitude earthquake has struck off the Kamchatka Peninsula, which is around 6,500 kilometers. It's located in the far east region of Russia, and in fact, in the Pacific, where this 8.7 magnitude earthquake has in fact also resulted in tsunami warnings across the Pacific, which also includes distances as far as the U.S. West Coast, all the way to Alaska, and even parts of the West Coast of Canada, of course, Japan, and even the Hawaii Islands. Now, in the latest, we're getting footage of waves crashing in to the Kamchatka Peninsula and other parts of the Pacific. Now, these are images provided to us and footages, in fact, from Russian state media, and the USGS, the United States Geological Survey, is also closely following and monitoring this situation. Back to you, Parmeshwar.
Thanks so much, Arjun, for that update. Switching tracks. Just days ahead of the self-imposed August 1st deadline date before the tariffs come into effect, U.S. President Donald Trump has stated that the India-U.S. trade deal was working out very well, but hinted at a 20 to 25% tariff on New Delhi. During a gaggle with the press interaction aboard Air Force One, Mr. Trump responded to a report suggesting that India might be preparing for 20 to 25% tariffs, stating that India had been imposing higher tariffs on the U.S. as compared to other countries. He said India is a good friend, but listen in to the full remarks.
India is preparing to face higher U.S. tariffs between 20 and 25%. Is that what you're tracking, or what do you think the rate will be for India?
That they are going to pay 25%.
Yeah, that India is preparing to face higher U.S. tariffs between 20 and 25%.
Yeah, I think so. Look, they're my friends, and he's my friend. And, you know, they ended the war with Pakistan at my request, and that was great. And Pakistan did also. India's been a good friend, but India has charged basically more tariffs than almost any other country. You know that, right? Over the years. But now I'm in charge, and you just can't do that.
The hopes for an interim trade deal before August 1st are now, it's virtually impossible now that we will have some sort of a deal coming in, especially with commentary coming in from the US that the India-US deal requires more time, it requires more negotiations, and clearly some sort of sticking points coming in from the Indian side in terms of market access. The US not liking how much or how less rather India is willing to open up its market for US firms to come in and sell their products and services. So that is the word that is coming in from the US. We're seeing that the focus of negotiations now, we have all these trade talks that are going in. Remember, India was the first country, or at least one of the first countries to enter negotiations with the US when these tariffs had come about. So this is, and now we're at the sixth round of negotiations. Another round is set for August 25th. A US team will visit India for that round. And all that focus will now be on the September-October trade, or the first tranche deadline that was envisioned by Prime Minister Modi and President Trump. So all negotiations will be focused there now.
Meanwhile, a US trade delegation is set to visit India in mid-August to discuss a broader trade deal. Natasha Esrani has been tracking all that's happening behind the scenes. What exactly is the scope of this visit, and how is it being impacted by the ongoing back and forth on tariff threats as well as repeated deadline extensions? Listen in to Natasha Esrani's report.
Well, yes, the Indian delegation had spent a lot of time in Washington, D.C. In fact, their trip to Washington, D.C. was postponed several times, and there have already been 5 rounds of talks between India and the United States on this trade agreement. This will be the 6th round, where the U.S. trade team is going to come to India towards the latter half of August. Now, this is about the bigger picture, much bigger than the tariffs. Basically, Indo-US strategic cooperation is pretty strong. That remains strong overall. And what they're really hoping to do is what they call Mission 500, which is increasing the Indo-US bilateral trade to more than $500 billion, or at least $500 billion by 2030. So this is really about the longer term and about the larger framework that the two countries want to build with regards to the economic cooperation. And what India wants from that deal is removal of that reciprocal 26% tariff, certainly that, plus reductions on steel and aluminum and auto parts. Also, they want more labor-driven exports like textiles, garments, leather, gems, and jewelry from India going to the United States. They also want better access for Indian agricultural exports, which include oilseeds, bananas, shrimp, and grapes. But what the US wants, where there are certain sticking points, is the US wants greater access to India's agriculture and dairy sector. And this is where it gets tough, because there are massive farmer lobbies in India that don't want to see it happen. They don't want to see those big American companies come into the agricultural sector. And this is where there has been the maximum friction over this deal.
Moving on, in one of its most anticipated missions in recent years, the Indian Space Research Organization will launch NISAR, which is the NASA-ISRO Synthetic Aperture Radar, a sophisticated and quite expensive Earth observation satellite developed in collaboration with NASA. This will launch from Andhra Pradesh's Sriharikota this evening, Indian Standard Time. India and America unite to launch NISAR, which is the world's most expensive civilian Earth imaging satellite. Built in California and Bengaluru, it's set to launch from Sriharikota. NDTV science editor Pallav Bagla has more for us.
India and America are together making a satellite which will help save lives. Called the NISAR or the NISAR satellite, the NASA-ISRO Synthetic Aperture Radar satellite, a satellite which will be the single most expensive Earth imaging satellite ever to be made. It will cost $1.5 billion. The satellite, the components have been made at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory at Pasadena in California and at the URSC Satellite Center in Bangalore, and they have been integrated, and the launch will happen from Sriharikota using the geosynchronous satellite launch vehicle. Whenever India and America have worked together, the world's oldest democracy and the world's largest democracy, especially in the area of space technology, magic has happened. In Chandrayaan-1, the discovery of the presence of water molecules on the surface of the moon happened when India and America worked together. The NISAR satellite, which is the first big Indo-US collaboration in satellite making, is certainly an opportunity to save lives, understand climate change, and understand deformation of solid Earth.
Meanwhile, if you are planning a trip to the United States later this year, listen up, because starting 2nd of September this year, the US Department of State is rolling out tighter rules for non-immigrant visa applications. The United States has further tightened its non-immigrant visa norms, including conditions for interview waivers. So from the 2nd of September, all non-immigrant visa applicants, including applicants under 14 and those over 79, will generally require an in-person interview with a consular officer, barring a few exceptions. This is what the US State Department has said in its latest update. These changes mean that many applicants, especially first-timers and those renewing visas, will now have to attend in-person interviews. The eligibility for waivers, meanwhile, is being significantly scaled back. Turning attention now to Canada, where this can be seen as a boost for Indian immigrants, because bringing parents to Canada permanently is one of the many dreams of sons and daughters after becoming permanent residents themselves. Now, the Canadian federal government has officially reopened the Parents and Grandparents program for 2025. Basically, since the 28th of July, Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, which is the IRCC, has begun issuing invitations to apply to permanent residents and Canadian citizens who wish to sponsor their parents or sponsor their grandparents for permanent residence. My colleague Maha Siddiqui has been tracking all the finer details. She joins us live with a quick update currently. Maha, we're given to understand that Canada's new program is set to reunite about 10,000 immigrant families.
That's right, Parmeshwar. And there are two aspects to this news. First of all, the IRCC is going to be sending invites. They've already started doing that over the next 2 weeks to 17,860 applicants who would put in their sponsorship applications for their parents or grandparents in the year 2020. So out of that pool, 17,860 will be sent applications, will be sent invites, and out of which 10,000 applications will be cleared. Though the intake has again begun because this program was paused for a bit, so it comes as good news. However, the fact is that no fresh applications of sponsorship are being accepted at the moment. So this is from the pool 5 years ago from which people will be reunited with their families. This is under the reunification program. And it is from that pool that applications will be taken up by the IRCC.
Maha, thank you so much for joining us with the fine print and the latest details. In other news, the United States and China appear close to extending their trade truce beyond the August 12th deadline, but did not reach an agreement during 2 days of talks in Stockholm. While negotiators sounded a hopeful note, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said that President Donald Trump would have the final say on any deal. Beijing, which has taken a combative stance towards trade talks, may have pushed for concessions on technology access and US support for Taiwan that go beyond what Mr. Besant was authorized to agree to. This is what an expert has suggested. But a larger reorienting of the superpowers' economic relationship, well, that remains far off. Listen in to what the US trade representative had to say.
With respect to a potential pause, we're going to head back to Washington, D.C., and we're going to talk to the president about whether that's something that he wants to do. It's certainly something that's been under discussion, and so we'll brief the president on the outcome of this, and we'll see if there are any. We have further technical discussions that are happening right now as we speak among the teams, and so the president can make a final call on whether that's something that he wants to do.
By the way, India overtook China to become the top exporter of smartphones to the United States, reflecting supply chain shifts in the face of global trade upheaval. India accounted for 44% of the devices shipped to the US in the second quarter of 2025. That's up from 13% last year. China's share decreased from 61% to a quarter. Apple, by the way, has quietly moved to relocate more manufacturing to India amid Washington's trade war with Beijing. The US tech giant, grappling with competition from local Chinese players, is closing a store in the country for the first time, though a recent increase in shipments suggests it could be returning to growth.
A new day has dawned in India's tech journey as it's overtaken China as the top supplier of smartphones to the US for the first time. According to research firm Canalys, smartphones assembled in India accounted for 44% of US imports in the second quarter. This is a significant increase from just 13% in the same period last year. Not just that, as the total volume of smartphones made in India soared 240% from a year earlier. On the other hand, the share of Chinese smartphone exports to the US shrank to 25% from 61% a year earlier. Interestingly, Vietnam's share of exports was also higher than that of China at 30%. So what is the reason behind the sudden surge? The answer lies somewhere in the global trade tensions, as Apple is reportedly seeking to offset the risks and tariffs between the US and China. India provides the tech giant with much needed stability. According to reports, Apple has been speeding up plans to make most of its iPhones sold in the US at factories in India this year. Other smartphone giants such as Samsung and Motorola have also been trying to move assembly for US-bound smartphones to India. Delhi's smartphone factories are humming with new energy. Labor is cheaper, the political climate is stable, and the global appetite for a China Plus One strategy has given the country the opening it needed. With over 1 billion consumers at home and the tech footprint abroad getting bigger, India is rewriting the rules of the global tech game. Experts say this could be just the beginning. The next stop could be chips, EVs, and AI hardware. With Vishal Vivek, Bureau Report, NDTV World.
Switching tracks, the IMF has revised India's economic growth forecast upwards to 6.4% for FY26 and FY27, citing a more favorable global economic environment. Now, this projection positions India as the fastest growing economy among major nations. The revised global growth outlook reflects stronger than expected economic activity and adjustments in US trade policies too. While the IMF's forecast is slightly below the RBI's 6%, listen in to what the IMF has said in its latest remarks.
We have actually quite stable growth. In 2024, the growth outcome was 6.5%, and we project for 2025 6.4%, as well as in 2026. And the reason for this upward revisions to growth is because of the common factor that Pierre-Olivier talked about. The suspension of higher tariff rates basically is the main driver. And on the inflation front, we also had some downward revisions. What has been the driver of this relatively stable growth is the fact that there has been a reform momentum supporting robust consumption growth and a push for public investment.
News and updates continue in a moment right after this very short break. Do stay tuned. Welcome back. Britain's Prime Minister has said the UK would recognize a Palestinian state in September if Israel did not reach a Gaza ceasefire. The UK's decision, echoing France's announcement earlier this week, actually revives the prospect of a two-state solution and reflects the ballooning international pressure facing Israel over Gaza's humanitarian crisis. In the US, prominent pro-Israel politicians are growing more critical, mirroring new polling showing Americans' approval of Israel's military operation has reached a plummeting point. As Israel is pushed to take a new approach to Gaza, some hard-right Israeli lawmakers are calling for a full takeover of the territory. That such an option is on the table is recognition that Israel's current strategy isn't working. This is what analysts assert. Children will be banned from having YouTube accounts from December, with the federal government in Australia backflipping on an earlier decision to exempt the video platform from the national under-16 social media restrictions. The decision, to be confirmed by the Australian Prime Minister, is likely to set off a furious reaction from the Google-owned YouTube. Turkey has unveiled a 970 kg most powerful non-nuclear bomb. Turkey has developed two of its most advanced aircraft bombs, showcasing significant improvements in its military strike capabilities. The Gazap and Hayalet bombs have been developed by the NATO nation and were unveiled at the 17th International Defence Industry Fair. In fact, the Gazap, which weighs 970 kgs, is one country's most powerful conventional non-nuclear aircraft bomb. And the man who shot 4 people dead with an assault-style rifle inside a Midtown Manhattan skyscraper that houses the offices of Blackstone, KPMG and the NFL was carrying a suicide note blaming the National Football League for a degenerative brain disease he claimed to have. This is what New York City's police commissioner has said. Police have identified the gunman as Shane Tamura with a documented history of mental illness. Meanwhile, global pop star Katy Perry and former Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau were actually seen dining together at a high-end French bistro in Montreal last night. Katy Perry is currently touring Canada to promote her new album. Justin Trudeau, meanwhile, has maintained quite a low profile since resigning as Prime Minister back in January. Thank you for investing your time in watching this edition of The World 24/7. As always, we'll keep tracking the latest for you. Do stay tuned.